On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 1966. We're going to be taking a look at Frank Sinatra, and he's going to be performing That's Life. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus, and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So let's get Frank and the full band up on screen and see how they get on.
Did you hear about it? That's life. That's what all the people say. You're riding high in April, shot down in May. But I know I'm gonna change that tune. When I'm back on top in June, I said that's life. Funny as it may seem, some people get their kicks stepping on dreams, but I don't let it get me down. 'Cause this old world, it keeps going around. I've been a puppet, a pauper, a pirate, a poet, a pawn and a king. I've been up and down and over and out, and I know one thing: each time I find myself flat on my face, I pick myself up and get back in the race. That's life. I tell you, I can't deny it. I thought of quitting, baby, but my heart just won't buy it. And if I didn't think it was worth a single try, why, I'd jump right on a big bird and then I'd fly. I've been a puppet, a pauper, a pirate, a poet, a pawn and a king. I've been up and down and over and out, but I know one thing: each time I find myself laying flat on my face, I pick myself up and get back in the race. Yeah, that's life. That's life, and I can't deny it. Many times I thought of quitting, baby, but my heart won't buy it. But if there's nothing shaking come July, I'm gonna roll myself up in a big ball and die. Oh, yeah.
And there we have it. That's how you do it. And what a great live vocal from Frank Sinatra. One of those singers that just got it down in one take every single time. That's just how he rolled. But there is so much to get into here from a vocal perspective. Just to mention that the version we hear on the record was actually the second take in the studio. And Frank always did one take and that was it. But Jimmy Bowen, who was the producer at the time, knew that by asking Frank to do it again, something that he never normally did, it would annoy Frank. And this is what Jimmy wanted in the second take: a bit of attitude and a bit of bite. And he certainly got that. So the version that we hear ends with my and not oh yeah. As we can see in this performance, Frank ends it with that octave going down with oh yeah, but it's almost as if at the end of that second take, he says my, because he can't believe that he's been asked to sing the song all over again when the first version to him was fine. Great performance here by the full band as well. On that original recording, there were 40 members of the band involved, and that included the Wrecking Crew. Glenn Campbell was in there somewhere playing on the backing to That's Life. But just putting Frank under the spotlight and his standalone vocal that he had, there's such personality and expression in there. But there are a few things as to why Frank was so easy to listen to with his tone production as well. But that storytelling quality, the way that he communicates with his vocal, it's something to look out for in this performance, but throughout his whole singing career. The way that he would phrase his vocal, he isn't strict at all with the way that he sings. He does hit particular accents and emphasis points throughout the composition, but it's that lack of rigidity that he has for the most part with his vocal delivery that makes it so conversational. And I have cued the video to a particular point here where we can listen to at 1 minute and 50 the way that he says, "I tell you, I can't deny it," because it's a great example of that phrasing and the lack of rigidity within that phrasing.
That's right. I tell you, I can't deny it.
And there we have it. It is totally disjointed from the backing of the band. He's just saying, "I tell you, I can't deny it." There's no real phrasing in there, but he is hitting notes. This is the thing, that he's still singing, but he had this ability to talk in such a natural way and hit pitches at the same time. So why is Frank's voice so easy to listen to? You've got that tone, it is so unique, it's so thick, and it's something that happens throughout his whole range. It is so consistent. But for me, it is the stylizations that Frank uses, the way that he transitions from note to note smoothly without any rough edges. And what I mean by that is, when you change from one note to the next and you're singing, you can either do that abruptly, which sounds a little bit more offensive than doing it smoothly with the use of pitch bending. So by the time Frank gets from one note to the next, he's smoothly ascended or descended there by a gradual change in pitch using slides. He's not going around the corner to get to the next note where it will sound like a snap from one note to the next. I have cued the video to a point here where hopefully you guys will be able to hear this, but I will explain it afterwards. It's at 106. When he says, "Let it get me down," listen to the way that he says down.
But I don't let it get me down.
And there we have it. It's a very short example, but let it get me down. The way that he sings down is just a snapshot of his overall stylization of singing. He always smoothly ascends and descends through pitch sliding. If I was to sing that in a really abrupt way, it would go, "And I don't let it ever get me down." And you can hear how offensive that is because I'm not sliding. Singing it like that makes it sound like you're going down a staircase and every note is a step. So we go up one, "Let it get me down." And you're doing it in those rigid steps. Whereas if we go, "Let it get me down," it's now a smooth slide going up and down. The end part could be a slide all the way down. You just follow on that journey, and it is so much easier to listen to a slide. It's going to sound nicer because it isn't going down steps. There's no physical exertion involved. On a slide, you just sit on it, and then it takes you away in exactly the same way that Frank's voice does. An essential part of this technique is pitch accuracy, because the very last sound you hear is the pitch that you are aiming for with your slide. Whereas when you sing without sliding, you can maybe start a little bit flat or a little bit sharp and then adjust the pitch so that you end on pitch. For example, if I went, "Let it get me down," I started flat there and just adjusted it to get to the right pitch at the end. Whereas if I said, let it get me down, and I went too far and went flat, the last note you hear, the final destination, is flat. And there's no way back from that, because that was the end of the slide. In exactly the same way, if I finished sharp, you would be left with the sound of a sharp note rather than being left with a note that I've changed to be on pitch, so that you're left with that final thought, that final sound, and it sounds okay. So Frank's technique here is the hardest way to sing, to slide up and then nail the note in a fraction of a second at the end of the line, but he nails it every time. And this is the point. Once you add in the tone, the control, the vibrato, the other techniques, this stylization of being so smooth just makes it easy to listen to and sets him apart from every other vocalist. His vibrato is so controlled, the frequency of it, just being able to end that line with vibrato or the stylized slide. He had so many options that he could go to with his vocal. But the supported sound he had, just full stop, in order to get the tone that he achieved, this is something that a lot of people who are trying to imitate Frank Sinatra will go into their range where they talk. We will cover the range in a second, that Frank covers it within this composition and this performance. But the solid vocal tone that he produces is all about just leaning on that diaphragm. And when you are talking normally like I am now, you won't necessarily get a great deal of diaphragm being used. But if I now started to really lean into my sound, you start to get that supported sound, and the tone you produce is exaggerated. It becomes more full-bodied because there's more pressure and there's more just exertion in the sound. It's not a forced sound. It's not something that's going to be strained. It's just adding strength to the vocal tone and the support, the breath support that's being used. Just the body in his sound was all produced with his breath support, but he did it so naturally, and the tone that he produces when he then leans into that sound is second to none, unique. We all know that Frank was a great actor as well, and with his live performances, he would put a lot of his body into the song with different mannerisms, and they were all dependent on what the lyrical content was at the time that he was making all of these motions. But I have just queued it up to another part of the performance so that you can just watch his body, because the way that he conveys the lyrical content of the song is not just vocally. He's not just standing there doing nothing and singing. He's really communicating it with his body language.
I said that's life. Funny as it may seem, some people get their kicks stepping on dreams, but I don't let it get me down.
And there we have it. So all of the movement that is associated with what Frank is singing just adds another dimension to the song. I also love the way that Frank never sang to one person in the audience. He would look across the crowd, and especially this would have been something that made his shows in Las Vegas so engaging, just making eye contact with everybody, almost as if he's speaking at a dinner party or something, where he's got up in front of everyone and is just telling them a story. That is the impression you get from Frank Sinatra's vocal delivery, and that is why it is so engaging, because it feels like he is talking to you personally. So I've got the guitar out to show you guys the range that Frank is covering in this performance, and you will not notice that it is almost 2 octaves because of the way that he delivers it. The tonal consistency, he never seems like he's straining and changing the sound of his voice in order to hit a particular note. He's just got fantastic consistency all the way through. Anyway, we go as low as an A flat 2 in this performance, so it's way down there, 4th fret of your low E string if you've got your guitar out. I'm going to play through every note of the range that we have in this performance from Frank. A flat 2 is where we're starting. and we make our way all the way up to the F4. And you could be forgiven for thinking there that I was just playing every note on the guitar and I was just going to keep on going up, because that's almost what it's like. 2 octaves is such a change in pitch. And I say all the time about having 1 octave, how most singers want to try and reach an octave higher in their chorus to take you on that journey to reach the top of the mountain, to get that crescendo, all of those things that will have an impact musically. But Frank here goes all the way through his range. Most of the vocal here is going to sit around B3. So it means that it's going to be your open B string. If you've got your guitar out, that is B3. It's all around there. And also down G as well. You can just follow that down. But having that control throughout his range, that is so impressive. And you've also got to factor in here, every note that I just played, Frank is sliding up to the next note and then sliding down again. I do want to cover a bit of Frank's history and career in this video. I know that you guys probably already know a lot about Frank, and a video just covering his career could take years to get through, but we will do it briefly. He started to develop an interest in big band jazz music when he was young. At the age of 15, his uncle gave him a ukulele and he started performing around this time. He didn't graduate from high school. He was actually expelled for general rowdiness. That was the reason that was given. He had various jobs that he did after school. He did perform in social clubs at this time, and sometimes he would sing for his supper or cigarettes. Frank's mother was a huge driving force behind his early career, but also his life in general. In 1935, when he was 20 years of age, she asked a local group, the Three Flashes, whether Frank could join, and they did allow him into the group. They said because he had a car, which was a huge bonus. They auditioned for Major Bow's Amateur Hour, and they were known as the Hoboken Four for that. They won first prize, which meant that they got a 6-month contract to perform on stage and on radio throughout the USA. He quickly became known as the lead singer of the group, but he did move on to join the Harry James Band, and this is when he had his first commercial release, but unfortunately it wasn't massively successful. Frank did have that desire and drive to succeed, so he left and joined the Tommy Dorsey Band, and Tommy was a huge influence on Frank. Frank started to copy his mannerisms, the way that Tommy would perform, and Tommy was almost like a father figure to Frank during that time. He also took on Tommy's perfectionist side. In 1940 was when Polka Dots and Moonbeams was released, and this was the first experience of a hit that Frank had. Imagination also became a top 10 hit, and his first #1 was I'll Never Smile Again. But this was still with Tommy in the band, and in the early 40s he was having huge success. It was 1942 when he started to record some solo songs, and they seemed to go down really well. So he got excited about the prospect of being a solo artist, and he did want to go in that direction. Unfortunately, he had a contract with Tommy where Tommy was due to get 43% of everything that Frank earned in the entertainment industry, just for his whole life. Whereas Frank wasn't particularly happy with that contract, so a legal battle ensued, and this is where there are rumors of the mafia being involved on Frank's side in order to get him out of that ridiculous contract. So with just the right amount of persuasion and encouragement, Tommy agreed to let Frank out of that contract for a few $1,000s. The reports have said that Tommy agreed to this with a gun to his head, but whether that's true or not, the end result was that Frank was now a free agent. He could pursue his solo career, and Sinatra mania could ensue. In 1943 is when he signed to Columbia Records as a solo artist, and understandably they wanted him to record as much new material as possible, get it out there as soon as possible, and capitalize on the momentum and popularity that he had at that time. By the way, he didn't serve in the war because he had a perforated eardrum, and it's something he had his whole life. But also, it was reported that his psychiatric evaluation wasn't positive, so he wouldn't have made it from that standpoint either. So he just entertained the troops. To give you an idea of his popularity, in 1946, he was performing 45 times a week and earning $93,000 a week. And that same year, he released The Voice of Frank Sinatra, which got to #1 in the charts. Unfortunately, by 1950, things started to go a bit downhill because the mafia connection that he allegedly had was being reported on in the media, and also the death of publicist George Evans hit him hard at that time. Another thing that made it into the papers at this time was his reported affair with Ava Gardner, and unfortunately, because of the emotional tension that he was going through, he started to get a bad throat, lost his voice, which just really compounded the issue. He was starting to sing in Las Vegas at this time, but due to sales decreasing, he was dropped by the record label. But he would experience a career revival in 1953 with the movie From Here to Eternity, which was a huge success, put him back on the map. But he also just worked every hour of every day to make a success of himself, given this revival from the movie. So he signed with Capitol Records, experienced massive success from then on. In 1966, he released That's Life, the album and the song, which were both top 10 hits. He did announce his retirement 4 years after that in 1970, but then he came out of retirement in 1973, and again, he was back. Massive success. I'm not going to have time to cover everything in this video. His acting as well, a hugely successful and popular actor. He had so many skills and so many strings to his bow, but you guys don't need me to tell you how successful Frank was in his music career and acting career. And the Rat Pack as well, something that I haven't mentioned about his stint in Las Vegas, something that I do mention in my Sammy Davis Jr. video. If you want to check that one out independently, you can do. But thank you guys so much for suggesting this video for me to take a look at, and keep those suggestions coming in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Rock!